I have known Heather Carver, my interviewee in Portland, Oregon, for many years. She was an organizer for our Earth Charter Community Summits. And she lives in a co-housing community there that came about because a developer had an interest in it. That's unique. Another unique thing about it is the form of governance that it uses, or that's wrong, the form of decision making. It's not consensus, it's sociocracy. So watch this interview and learn how you can, if you're interested in co-housing and maybe having actions bogged down in yours, do differently. Enjoy meeting Heather.
Columbia Eco Village is a co-housing community. And co-housing is sort of an intentional neighborhood where everyone has their own private residence, but there's also an emphasis on shared spaces, shared resources, knowing the neighbors and doing things together. Well, my husband and I had been part of another group that met for 5 years trying to get a co-housing community going. But it's quite complicated getting enough people, and then those people have to have this kind of commitment to working together and being able to consent on things and come up with enough resources to then get property so that we could make the whole thing happen. And it took us 5 years of valuable learning, but we weren't really getting anywhere when we learned about this property, that the people who had owned the one section of it, the farm part of it, were at that time running the Portland Permaculture Institute. They then got an agreement to acquire the apartments that were adjacent to it. It had originally all been part of the same farm. Putting the two pieces of land back together would give a great opportunity for a co-housing community. So we all started meeting together to come up with things like vision and values, and how was this going to work, and what did we want to do in terms of renovating the apartments and converting them to condominiums. So individuals or families who became part of the community would be buying their unit for the most part. Right. Well, kind of the standard for co-housing up till a few years ago was always like individuals would build houses. It was almost all new construction and so forth, and the process could take years. More recently, we've gotten into what's called developer-driven co-housing, which in some cases it's done sort of almost on spec. But in this case, some of the people, like the people who owned the back part of the property and who were buying the apartments, took on the role of developer. And then we had another developer, a professional developer, that partnered with them because he was interested in the idea of co-housing and saw it as possibly something that there might be more demand for in the future. So he wanted to have a project like this in his portfolio. So he agreed to work with us for way less than he would normally make on a project of this size. So together they formed a partnership to be the developers for this project, which meant that they could then go ahead and get construction loans and so forth, and be working on the renovation and so forth while we were still trying to sell units, get people to buy in and commit to buying a unit. We have 37 units, so I believe we have 55 adults and 9 kids. Consensus in general, is the general way that co-housing communities do things, and that's what we were doing for the first several years. We've been living in here about 5 years now. And but sometimes it's very difficult to get that many people to agree to anything. Human nature moves into. So recently we've had a very interesting experiment with what's called sociocracy or dynamic governance, which is another way of accomplishing the same goals as consensus, in that everyone has a voice, everyone's able to have input on questions, but the actual decision-making process is a little different, so that it's easier to resolve objections and so forth and actually come to a decision. Yes, one of the things that we ran into with trying to do things by consensus was frequently, like when we'd make a decision, it sort of was like, well, once we make this decision, it's going to be like that forever. So people would be very worried about, well, what if this goes wrong, or possibly that could go wrong, really trying to get things perfect. And when you've got this many people trying to agree on something, it's very hard to find perfection. So then one of the nice things built into the sociocratic method is that things are done kind of for a certain amount of time. We can try something out, after which there will be a review process and see how it's working. Do we need to tweak something, or do we need to just go back to the way it was before? So that kind of relieves the burden of having to make perfect decisions. And it's still kind of new. We've just been through this experiment, and we're still going through the evaluation process, which will take us a while. But it's kind of cleared up a lot of log jams. On the 4 acre of land, we've got a lot of garden space, a lot of fruit trees, and nut trees, walnuts and hazelnuts, and tons of figs and pears and persimmons and all kinds of interesting things. And a lot of garden space. We have garden space for our community meals, and each household has a small individual garden space. And we have a dining hall where we have community meals, and different people sign up to cook and clean and so forth. And during the summer, a lot of the produce will come from our gardens. And yeah, we have our dining hall has a nice big area for where we have our meals. And we also have parties there and dances and our annual talent show. And we've got a wonderful kitchen. Yeah, we have that building. And then we also have our farmhouse, a 100-year-old farmhouse, which was the original home on this land. And so we share, like the bedrooms are the guest rooms. Any of the members can sign up to use guest rooms for so many nights a year. And we can also use the first floor if we want to have a private party or something. Or say, like me, we live in a 1-bedroom, so if we want to have a couple people over for dinner, we just don't have room for them to sit. But we can use the dining room of the farmhouse. Minor, like the guest rooms, we charge $5 a night. It's basically just enough to cover the utilities for laundering the sheets and so forth. And we'll say most of them, I mean, it is condominiums, so each of us has our own mortgage, and some of the units are rented. There's also the homeowner dues, which are much lower than most condominiums because we do the work ourselves. The members get out, and we have work parties and so forth to get out and do all the pruning the trees and mowing the lawn and planting and maintaining and so forth. We have people who work on building maintenance, and other people work on landscape things. And it depends on the square feet of the unit. But, well, mine is a 1-bedroom, 514 square feet, and ours at this point is $187 a month. There's a website, cohousing.org. It's the National Co-housing Association. And there's lots of information there there are a number of books now. Co-housing originated in Denmark and was brought to this country about 20 some years ago. And there are now, I think, something like 120 co-housing communities in the United States, and lots more groups start up investigating it. But it can be fairly complicated to actually get enough people and resources together and so forth. And as I say, getting a group of people to agree on a lot of important things when there's money at stake is pretty tricky. Just have like a big pot of beans and rice and a lot of different veggie toppings. And the trick to having everybody love the food is letting them add everything that they want, because that way they take what they like and they think you're a great cook.